All right, another simple project finance model. Okay, I'm sure I have too many of these. I'm sure this is going to be repetitive. I'm making a simple model for one and only one reason. And that reason is to demonstrate how the parallel model UDF concept is going to work. Now, um, I've I have shown this, I think, with some other models, but let's make another simple model now. How about, here's what I'll do. I'll go through the assumptions first, and so you turn this off. If you're anywhere advanced in financial models, please don't waste your time watching this. There's an off button on the video, I'm sure. Just X out of it. I'm going to make a basic annual model, okay? And we'll have and I'll work through some of the assumptions. I'm going to put a P90 and a P50 and P99 and a P50 in here so we could size the debt with the two different methods later on. Don't do this now. Don't worry. It's not going to be done right now. And I'll put some CapEx in and the tax rate. Stop, full stop. Then some financing, this time a little bit more on the financing, either with P50 or P99. I'll put some upfront equity, and if we put 100% upfront equity or 0% upfront equity, we can switch from pro rata to upfront funding. We've got a debt tenor, only one debt issue this time. Simple kind of interest rate that changes. A DSRA, since an annual model, I'm making the DSRA as a percentage. We'll put the P50 and the P90 in. Actually, we won't. We'll just put the EBITDA in. I've already made one mistake. And then we'll put some CapEx in, and we'll compute the project IRR. Please, oh, I'm getting interrupted as usual. Damn. And then I put the sources and uses summary in, and then we put a funding section in. Then we put a sculpting section in, and then a debt balance schedule, a DSRA, and a profit and loss, and a cash flow waterfall, and a balance sheet. That's the structure. And finally, maybe an equity IR. That's what I want to do, and I want to do it very, very quickly. So let's put the timing in. How about the very first thing? Let's go a little bit over here and put Alt EIS and tab and put about a 25 years as the maximum possible length. Now, let me make sure I'm still, okay, 3 minutes. Then let's put the date in. Okay, and the date is, let's do this. Put an equal sign. Let's start this right at the financial close and use our trusty old now, wait. I have two files open. I have the generic macro open. I say not for Apple use right now. I've got to figure out how to fix the Apple thing for it. And I have one that says this is the interpolate and look up function, UDF function, which I'll have to implement in a minute. Since I have the generic macros open, I can put equal E date, tab, go back to this date, 12, shift control R, okay? And then we can put the construction period in, and let's use column G as our first kind of little column. So we'll start here and we'll end here. This we can put start and end. And I have to relax. I need to relax. There's no hurry here because this is, again, just a model that I'm going to set up so you can see how everything works, and then we can implement I'm going to make it less than, we can implement the come on, get some words out that we can implement the parallel UDF model concept. Now, the operations will start, they'll be equal to this, and they'll end over here. And I think this time we have to have an equal sign. So what I did, of course, here was use an eDate, put in this as a number, and then put in this. Now, if I press Control-Alt-C, this is this old-fashioned generic macro thing. I'm going to perhaps use this. I'll include some conditional formatting on the true and false, and I don't really have much else. And then we get our coloring. Okay, I don't know, that's a kind of bizarre coloring on the green, but I'll leave it for now. So so that was I was doing that to show you the end date, and we can put an and statement and put a not during the construction period. There are no rules here, and you go up to this and make it less than or equal to the end date. You know, if you want to just test it, you can put a little count if. Maybe I'll put the little tests over here. Count if it has a U in there, doesn't it? Okay, comma true, and I did it wrong, and it should have been less than. I was wondering about that. Excuse me for that mistake. Okay, I don't know if I'll even leave that. I'll leave that. What the heck? Okay. Now I put EBIT.P50 and P90. I did that so we could eventually compute the tariff to get a target equity IRR at one number, and then the debt at either the P50 or the P90. So let's just take this true. I'll put an F4 around it a couple times, multiply it by this, plus this one F4 a few times, times this one, okay? And then so that's our applied. So if we put a false here, I should have told you this. I just has an input, and this is not. So if I put a false here, then it gives me the P90. Let's leave it on the P50, okay? There's no rule there. I hope you don't think that's some kind of rule. We could put the same thing and put down here a DSRA applied. Now it gave me that horrible thing. This times this. Maybe I should have done a sum product plus this times the next one. Okay. And then we have the rest of our inputs. Now let's put our EBITDA in. And our EBITDA, I said, well, our EBITDA is going to be 0 here. Now, this was kind of stupid. I'm going to move this a little over and put my 0 here. Now, we could make a lookup function. If we made a lookup function, we would simply type equal lookup, and I hope you do this, and the big rule is to first use the little thing right at the top and then click on the whole line for the corresponding numbers in the table, and then click on the third line, and we can press Shift Control R, and we can have it go up and down. But we might want to have it go gradually up and down, and if I do that, here we go. I'm gonna go to my little lookup and interpolate area, and click on this. Control C, get the whole little stuff in there. Go back to my sheet. Alt F8, and we don't have anything in our workbook yet. So I put a little thing here. Why don't I delete this now since I opened it, and copy it, and then I have my interpolate lookup, and then I just put equal interpolate lookup, and if I want, this is a one with a kind of a growth rate method, not a linear method, and I didn't explain that right. What it does is it computes the growth rate, so it gradually kind of goes up, Shift Control 1, and then I gradually get up to the 120, gradually and eventually it just stays at the 80. Yeah, it goes then from the 120 down to the 80. Maybe I should change this a little bit and put this. Oh no, I thought, well, let's put 12. And don't forget, I forgot something crucial. I forgot to multiply this lookup by the operation switch, and the operation switch should always be right in kind of sight. So I didn't. Perhaps I should do this, and I hate this when it does this. Control-Alt-C just to be lazy, and color the sheet. And maybe I should just put it equal this plus the operation switch. Okay. Then we'll start later, and then for my lookup, I'll change it to the. Whoops. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Oh, where did you go? You silly little shit. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. And for the capital expenditures, then I said, okay, we had a 3-period construction. Okay, and I realized I didn't save this file before I did the exercise, I think. But I'm going to give you a blank file. I'll blank it all out. Okay, and I divide that across, the F4 times this one, F4 times the construction period, and that gives us a simplistic kind of thing. So if we get our pre-tax cash flow, it's the EBITDA minus the capex, and we can get, how about I'll put that right here. Since it's an annual model, I can do it very simplistically here. And I press Shift Control P for my little thing. That's a very, very high project IRR. Perhaps I'll put 850 in. Okay, that was a whole lot higher than. Now I guess I was a little bit wrong because it's not the project IRR, it's really the pre-tax project IRR. So let's accumulate the capital expenditures, and let's accumulate the depreciation down here in line 47. Okay, and let's take the difference and call that the net plant. Now, of course, I don't have the depreciation yet, but for the depreciation rate, let's use the lifetime of the project. That's not necessarily true, of course. And we'll take the capex divided by the rate and multiply that by the operation period. Okay, now that's not necessarily the case. This case it went down to 0, but we should, as a matter of practice, put a minimum of this or the opening balance of the net plant, not the. Okay, and then we can compute our EBT, which is our EBIT minus the depreciation. Perhaps I think a little extra line might be well here. And then let's get the tax rate. And our tax rate is going to cause problems not here, really. And this is the taxes as if this whole thing is basically a model that you would stop with if you had all equity. So let's take this minus the taxes. That gives us our after-tax cash flow. And I realize that now it's too low, isn't it? Okay, so let's put it back. Instead of being 850, let's put it 750. And then we get I'm gonna make it 700. Okay. This is enough above the interest rate. Well, this is really what you should be comparing to the interest rate. You should theoretically compare this to the after-tax interest rate. Okay. Now let's start some sources and uses analysis. Now this is a summary statement. It really doesn't fit into any single column. Perhaps I'll do it here. And this summary sources and uses, again, you use this summary sources and uses, and I did it completely incorrectly. Should put just some, and that was a horrible, stupid mistake. And we can get the sum of the IDC, but that doesn't come from below and there. So that's going to be our kind of first circular references. We're going to have some circular references related to the EPC and the DSRA, which we'll address in just a little bit. I'm going to leave it blank for a long time. Now the debt, that also comes from below. That comes from downstairs in our sculpting section. And I think I'll put the PV of the debt service here. Perhaps this one I'll go ahead and fill in. Okay, and let's go down and kind of do it, whatever that means. Okay, and then we have the difference. Do, for me, do means whatever. Alt equal, okay? Oops, I must have hit something bad. Okay, and we have our sources and uses with no debt so far. Okay, and then funding is zero, so the equity up front is the 0%. Whoops, excuse me. This multiplied by the equity. Okay, and that means the remaining pro rata is going to be the total equity minus this, and it should say remaining equity, excuse me, and then the cash flow is going to be this number divided by the total project cost, okay, which is right now 100%. Let's show you in just a minute how we use those. Now for now, I'm going to completely cheat. I'm going to pretend in the stupidest way you could possibly kind of imagine that the EBITDA minus the all equity taxes minus the taxes, or the EBIT, well, no, it's really the post-tax cash flow. That is the CFADS. Of course, that's not the case. The CFADS comes from down here in the cash flow waterfall, and that we'll have a circular reference due to the taxes. But for right now, let's put in, and we're going to change this. So, and my suggestion is to go ahead and do it and understand where the circular references are, and then fix the circular references kind of afterwards. So that's the, well, I really meant to just put this in, didn't I? So you can, a little more transparency, and then this. Okay, and then we can put our interest rate in. And the interest rate is another lookup. This time, don't use this time I suppose I'll use this thing. I didn't really tell you which period number that is, but then we have a interest rate, and then we can have an interest rate index. Okay, I've missed some things. And we can start with the number 1 and then say go back to that number 1, and if it's the operation period, which if you had a grace period, you would include it would really be the debt repayment period if times this. Now that gives us 1 until we just hit the final number, and then the COD, excuse me, and then we put sum product and take the debt service and divide that debt service by the uh, the interest rate index, and now we have our debt amount in. Okay, so we haven't filled in these because of circular references. We've put some debt and put some equity, and we've got now the just what I did. Okay, let's fill in the EPC cost and show you what I mean. Maybe that will help my explanations. It's supposed to be so simple, and I didn't do it. Now let's sum these. Now I'm summing these again because the whole idea of this model is to illustrate circular references, and there'll be a circular reference for this. Now the equity up front is this amount, which we've just already put in our little analysis. So I think it was key to do that, and we press the F4 button and keep track of that. And then we're going to have an opening balance of the equity, which will accumulate the amount we've already taken, and our remaining equity that we can, our remaining amount to fund with equity is this amount. And then we put our opening balance as the last year closing balance, and then our equity funding is the minimum of either how much we can produce, how much we have left to invest, or this. So it's all going to be invested as equity, and then the closing balance is the sum of these two. Okay, and then now I better put the debt pro rata debt percent and I put pro rata, and the pro rata equity percent. Oh, how boring, how tedious, how absolutely this is torture is the best way I would do it. Just a minute. I am totally embarrassed, totally goddamn embarrassed, because, let's do it simply. I made this mistake on purpose, of course not. I said, let's take the equity that's up front, and whatever left over we put here. So our total pro rata, total left over is the total funding minus the equity. And let's take that equity that's left over as a percentage of the leftover amount, and then the debt that's left over as a percentage of the amount. That's what I should have done. Okay, idiot I am. And then we say, okay, let's even put here leftover for pro rata. And, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you how this UDF works. And I should have even used this terminology. It's the total amount of funding minus the amount of equity that we funded. That's the total amount that's left over. And then we can take this total amount of leftover and multiply it by the equity, and we can put in our debt amount, and this was an idiotic calculation as well. This would be the total debt we have from our sources and uses divided by the leftover debt amount, okay? And we take that number, that percentage, and we can multiply the same thing by that percentage. Finally, this helps me a little bit, because that's really how I'm going to do it from now on for the rest of my stupid life, which hopefully won't be too long. Get the debt funding. So the debt funding is just this amount. Okay, and then we can put our debt funding in and our equity funding, which is the pro rata equity plus the equity funding from up front. Okay, and now we can have our model. Now, of course, if I would put in, instead, I've wasted too much time on this pro rata issue. Okay, if I would put 0 here, which I'll leave, then we have, it's all completely smooth. Whatever. Okay. Now, once we're ready to go here, then let's put the opening balance of the debt equal the last period closing balance. Let's put the funding from up here. Funding is the debt funding, of course. And I suppose for this one, it doesn't hurt. We know we're going to have an interest expense down here, and we can take our total debt service that we've computed from our sculpting section and subtract the amount of the interest expense, line 116, and we'll put the closing balance as the opening balance plus this minus this, and we'll put in our interest rate just that we've already computed up here. And finally, our interest cost is always the opening balance multiplied by the interest rate. And I'm going to press Shift Control 1 here, Shift Control 1. And our interest expense is this interest cost multiplied by the operation period, and our interest during construction is the interest cost multiplied by the construction period. And then we can take this whole group of crap, Shift Control R, and we're finished. Now then once we have the debt balance, we can go to and get the DSRA. We better first compute the sum of the repayment and the interest as the debt service. And we can put in our required DSRA, which is our little 50%, if you remembered that one. Okay, and we can take the next period's debt service multiplied by that. Okay, that gives us, and then we can say, okay, well, how much do we have in the opening balance? This is a lot like the thing I just did, and our net funding required is how much we need minus how much we already have. Our opening balance is our previous year closing balance. We take the amount we need to fund and we multiply that by the construction period for the funding during construction. We multiply this by the operation period after construction, and we have a closing balance as the opening balance plus the funded plus the post funding, and okay, I didn't copy these across. Okay, and there we have our DSRA, which gets funded and then gets repaid here. We have to do a little more funding because our cash flow went up, and then we finish it. Now, let's get the interest during construction balance, which is the previous period plus our interest during construction, because we have to put this on the balance sheet, and for our depreciation rate, we can kind of cheat and just go upstairs where we computed it earlier, where we had our depreciation expense divided by our balance. Okay, I press Shift Control P, and then we can multiply these together, and we don't have to do any of the other stuff. And our net balance, and then I guess we have to accumulate this depreciation. Okay, and then I'm gonna just keep adding to that one, and we can finally get our net balance, and that's the amount we'll put on our balance sheet. Okay, a little tiny bit painful. I totally agree. Now let's just start with our profit and loss. Let's put our EBITDA in. No, I didn't put revenues, expenses, and all that in. I suppose I should have told you that. Let's get our depreciation. This time it's going to be the IDC depreciation, which I just incorrectly took, plus the depreciation on the base assets. Okay, and then we can compute our interest before earnings and taxes, and we can get our interest expense, not our interest during construction, because we expensed interest during construction as a depreciation item. And I'm gonna put a couple of the Shift Control E. This is just a simple, very simple shortcut that I made, and then we'll get our earnings before taxes. Okay, which is still positive, but you know, if we put in our P99 case, it wouldn't be positive. So we better put a NOL, the opening balance equals the closing balance, and then you put a maximum of the minus of the EBT or 0, and that just adds the loss, and then you put a maximum of this. Oh, sorry. This is the maximum of this, or 0, and the minimum also of the opening balance of the taxes. Okay, it's really so. I hope you didn't say, that looks like it sucks. That's so hard. It's not hard at all. Well, for me, the very first time I did it, it was hard, I guess. And then you can have your earnings after the NOL, which is the EBT, which if that's negative, we add back the taxes. If tax rate, I put this new US tax rate, I believe that's the case. Okay, and then we can get our net income, which is the difference. Okay, and that's that. Okay, and we can continue with the cash flow waterfall, which is just the EBITDA, and we take away the taxes now. That's why we needed the... Oh, this is so tedious and so horrible. That's why we needed the profit and loss statement. Then we take the difference, and we can then find the interest expense. I hope we can find it right here, and then we can find the repayment just a little bit above in the debt section. Now, you know, this says, okay, I simplified, I didn't have multiple debt issues, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. But it really illustrates, I hope, the structure of the whole thing. So CFADS minus this, minus that gives us the net cash flow, and we better put a little underline here, because I would scream if you didn't get the underlines there. And then now the DSRA, I think, if that's we'll subtract this amount that's in the DSRA, and we take this thing that's funded after the operation. I'm going to leave a cash flow sweep out for now and just put a minus. Okay. Now I'll press Shift Control R, and then perhaps we better put the... Okay, and then we put this in. Now that we can put in all our balances, let's get the balance sheet for once. So I'll put the closing balance of the DSRA in, the closing balance of the gross plant. That's before we put any IDC. I can put a minus on the accumulated depreciation. Okay, and then suppose I'll just do this like this, and I hope not to get interrupted. I'll speak in a little while. Please don't. I'm trying to finish this. Okay. And then I'm going to put in and I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh my God. And then I can get alt equal. We can add up all the assets. Now for the equity, the opening balance is equal to the closing balance. And then we can find out how much equity we put into the project down here. And then we can go up to the last line of our profit and loss statement to get our equity funding, the last line of the cash flow to get the debt funding, and we put in the opening balance plus this, plus the income. I should have put a minus on this, but I didn't, so I'll just put minus there. And then finally, let's get the debt balance from our debt balance section. Okay, and the debt plus the equity hopefully is the same. Oh, that's so cool. And then we put our difference in here, okay? This minus this. Okay, and then we'll put our cash flow available for debt service up here, and our debt service, which is our interest, plus our repayment. Now this is not going to give me the right answer because of a circular reference, and we can put it if this is greater than some small number, then we'll divide the two. Okay, and then we'll put our equity cash flow as the dividends here minus the amount we invested, which is in the funding section, which is kind of down here at the bottom. And we can take all of these numbers, all of them, and shift control R. Okay, and I have a few things to fix. How boring is that? And I have a difference in my balance sheet saying I have some kind of error. Okay, and let's find our error, hopefully easily. Okay, and our error comes in 6.86, which is our IDC, and we didn't put our IDC in the funding section, so that's a pretty obvious one. It told us, oh no, you got to do that. Now, so let's put an equal sign and get the IDC down here. Okay. And now, that's okay. It still doesn't have a circular reference, so we fixed that one. But we still have a problem here. We have a 34 problem here, which is the DSRA. And I think that might cause a circular reference problem. So let's put the DSRA funding. Oh, look at me. I'm afraid now. Now I'm really, really afraid. But it might not cause a circular reference. I should be much more confident in what's going to happen. It might not cause a circular reference because oh, shoot. And I'm going to do something I never ever, I just hate doing so badly I can hardly stand it. Okay, I'm going to put in iterative calculation. All right, and see if our balance sheet balances. Okay, and it does. And it balanced all the way. And that's it. Okay, so we've gone through this. Now what we haven't done is we haven't put the sum of all the IDC here. We haven't put the sum of the DSRA here. We have not done a correct calculation of the CFADS, where we take the CFADS from the down here. We take the correctly from down here by the cash flow waterfall. So what we need to do is fix all of these, and that's where I'm going to really, and that was the whole idea of making this, is to demonstrate how our UDF system works compared to a copy and paste system.